So the preceding reference allows to add new content information. I don't know what that means. Content information to our analysis, but now allows us to add new content information to our analysis by legitimizing the next conditional that must be made, which is the following. And I'm not going to write this down. If population growth increases, then the likelihood of water pollution increases. The consequence is specifically legitimized by that consequence, which I derived on my own. Then the likelihood of water pollution increases is legitimized by appeal to the previous citation. What's the citation? Extract, and I would put this in my notes when I write. Quote, the cause of water pollution continue to be amplified by dense populations. Right? The cause of water pollution, and this is important, right? The cause of water pollution continues to be amplified by dense population. So, the cause of water pollution, what causes water pollution, right? The antecedent of water pollution, right? Because it caused, something else out there caused water pollution. So water pollution becomes my consequence, right? So what's the cause? The cause of water pollution as consequence continues to be amplified by population, dense population as antecedent. If you have a dense population, then you have water pollution. That's what that's saying, but I have to restructure it to conform to the proper format of the conditional statement. It is a conditional statement, it just doesn't assume the form of a conditional statement. That's another thing. Another thing is when people they write conditional statements, but they haven't had the training. They know logic, I mean, intuitively, I guess, or they've learned it, not with the rigor that I'm presenting it here, and they structure their arguments in such a manner that it is a conditional, but you would never identify it as a conditional because it's not going to be as explicit as I am now. If then, if then. The claim, the cause of water pollution continues to be amplified by dense populations is a conditional claim. Satisfies the function of an antecedent and a conclusion. It's on you to be able to identify where each thing is, right? If I say something is the cause of, there's an antecedent that needs to be satisfied in order for that thing to be caused. What's being caused now? Water pollution. That's the consequence. Okay? Well, what conditions led to water pollution being the consequence? Dense population. So, in this sense, you don't have a flexibility. You couldn't inverse it. You would be wrong. Right? If you put I mean, and it doesn't make sense, right, to say that water pollution is the cause of population growth. That wouldn't make sense, right? Population growth is the cause of water pollution, right? And hopefully, just intuitively, you would recognize that it wouldn't make sense to reverse it. You couldn't reverse it; it would mess up your whole argument. But just keep that in mind. So we have at this point completed the second conditional. So we completed the first conditional claim on page 13, and now we're going to finally complete the second conditional claim on page 14, and it is the following. If population growth increases, then the likelihood of water pollution increases. Now let me just write this down so that we have everything on the board. I'm going to go to page 13 and write the first, it says first conditional relationship, and I'm going to write that down again. So this will be part 1, parts 1 and 2 of the HS, and it says if, remember, flip back to page 13, just so that this is clear. If groundwater pumping, if ground is increased, then, if groundwater pumping is increased, the likelihood of supporting population growth also increases. Okay, so that assumes the form if A then B. Now flip the page to page 14. Based on citation, reference, appeal, everything that we've done, I mean, this is an insanely tedious process. We have finally been able to get our second conditional claim, which is if B, then C. This is going to satisfy parts 3 and 4 of HS. So this is parts 1 and 2, and you saw how much work it took for us to finally sort of extract the claim and refine it in such a manner that we had the conditional claim in the proper format. Same thing here, B and C. What's the conclusion that we get right underneath second conditional claim? If population growth increases, if population growth increases, right? If population growth increases, then the likelihood of water pollution also increases, right? So if population growth increases, then the likelihood of water pollution also increases. So this is part 3 and 4, B and C. So I've satisfied this, and I've satisfied this. Okay. Note, it should be clear now that we have constructed everything we need to satisfy the hypothetical syllogism, because the conclusion, I don't need external citation, I derive the conclusion from what I already have. Right? If A, then B, if B, then C, therefore if A, then C. Right? So to be clear, so that you can see this, we have if groundwater pumping is increased, right? This is A. Then the likelihood of supporting population growth also increases. This is B, right? Population growth also increases. Now we have if population growth increases. See, population growth increases, population growth increases. This is, again, B. And then this is C. Right? So you can see that B occupies, after the comma, the consequence, and B occupies the antecedent, so that I can use this duality of B, just like this, to connect A, groundwater pumping, to C, water pollution. All right, so that's where this is going to go. So you need to be able to see that systemically in each of the parts, right? It's definitely a tedious task. So, affirmation of parts 1 and 2 of HS, affirmation of parts 3 and 4 in HS, and now, bottom of page 14, it should be clear now that we can derive the needed conclusion from the new addition to the analysis of water conservation, which must be, if groundwater pumping is increased, then the likelihood of water pollution increases, right? If groundwater pumping increases, then what? Then we jump to the final conclusion, then the likelihood of water pollution also increases. That's derived from the two parts. The two parts are themselves contingent on appeals to authority, refinement of generalized claims into formalized conditional claims, and blah, 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 blah. So now we have our conclusion. This is part. We have the final claim as part 5 and 6 of HS, and what is that? If groundwater pumping is increased, then the likelihood of water pollution increases. If groundwater pumping increases, if groundwater pumping increase, that's A. So we know that this is A. If groundwater pumping increases, that's A. Then the likelihood of water pollution increases. Then the likelihood of water pollution also increases. That's C. So this is C. So then I can, you can see it. Like you can see it. This is the argument. It took a long time to get to this part. We haven't even we haven't even posited a sentence yet. We haven't formalized example 1. But the idea is, if A, then B. If B, then C. Therefore, if A, then C. And this is what it looks like. This would be a perfect place to stop. And I just might, what's on the top of the page? Alright, so let's do, that actually is a good place to stop. Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, no, I'll go top of page 15, and I'll do the final sort of formulation of example 1, and then I'll break. Alright, I'll right there. Because it's already super long, and I got 5 more pages. This is going to be a really long lecture. So, top of page 15. This first bit, if groundwater pumping is increased, as we said, facilitates antecedent 1. Alright, this is antecedent 1. This is the first antecedent. The likelihood of supporting population growth is the first consequence. Antecedent 1, consequent 1 constitutes part 1 and 2 of HS. Next, we have, I'm not going to read it because that's basically all this is saying. Next we have antecedent 2, consequence 2, consequence 2, constitutes part 3 and 4, HS. Finally, we have reaffirmation of antecedent 1. We have reaffirmation of antecedent 1 if groundwater pumping is increased. If groundwater pumping is increased, reaffirmation of antecedent 1. We have reaffirmation of antecedent 2. Then the likelihood of water pollution also increases. Then the likelihood of water pollution also increases. Affirmation of antecedent 2. And thus we're finished. So that the final well, properly, systematically formalized example, which we will then flesh out, what we're going to build now, our argument on, is the following. I'm going to read it, and then I'm actually going to create a section, what is it, section 3? Section 3.1, and do this another day because it's already an hour and 40 minutes in. It's more than an hour 40. Example 1. If groundwater pumping is increased, then the likelihood for supporting population growth also increases. If population growth increases, then the likelihood for water pollution also increases. Therefore, if groundwater pumping increases, then the likelihood for water pollution also increases. So, obviously, it's not going to assume that final form in the fully realized version of our sort of sentence or paragraph. It'll have a better tone to it, but we're going to use that as the logical substrate to guide our argument, and we want our argument to be as meticulous as possible. And insofar as we have this, finally, after an hour and 40 plus minutes, finally formalized hypothetical syllogism, we can build on it from there. So I'm going to update the notes to account for a new section, which I'll label 3.1, and I will return to hypothetical syllogism at some point in the future, despite the fact that I've completed the notes, for the fact that this is going to take a lot of time, right? I don't want to rush through this, so I will come back and pick up next time in section 3.1. With that, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell. Have a good day.